At the end of Loki, episode 4, it seems like everything is about to explode and everybody is about to die. However, we know that this is not going to be the case because we have 2 episodes left. In our last video, we covered how Loki and Sylvie are probably going to use the temp pad of He Who Remains to go back in time and try again. We've had a few different TV spots and trailers for Loki season 2 show us Loki say, "All right, let's try to do this again." Basically telling us that yes, they are going to go back in time and try to get it right. And it seems like they're going to do this more than once. But the question is, what exactly is going to happen when they get it right? Well, if you've been following the channel, we still believe that He Who Remains is orchestrating this entire thing, that everything, including Victor Timely being spaghettified at the end of episode 4, and Loki then having to go back in time in episode 5 and 6, which I think we'll see, is a part of He Who Remains' plan, and OB is most likely working with him. Hate to say it, but OB could be working with the villain. And like we mentioned in our last video, I do believe that there is a scene in episode 4 where he was possibly lying to everybody. So in this video, we're going to dive into episode 4 and break down why we think He Who Remains is orchestrating the entire thing and why OB could be working with He Who Remains trying to help him return. And if you're new, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the latest breakdowns or MCU news. And we're doing a giveaway right now. If you subscribe and leave a comment, you're automatically entered for a chance to win a PS5, an Xbox Series X, some Marvel Legends items, or some DC items. The winner gets to pick one item, and we pick one winner at the end of each month. So before Loki season 2 even started, we've had a few insiders out there tell us that He Who Remains is going to return and kind of be like a He Who Returns. In fact, today, the insider Can We Get Some Toast tweeted this: "The writing of Loki season 2 continues to impress. The theme of this season seems to be how cyclical stories and even time can be. From OB and Victor cementing the Ouroboros nature of their relationship by meeting each other, to Loki realizing that he pruned himself in the future, everything's working in a circle, almost as if it's all being orchestrated by someone who will return. It all comes back around." And just like OB said in episode 4, it's a snake eating its own tail, in which Can We Get Some Toast posted a picture of, which of course is called an Ouroboros. Now this is what we've been thinking since episode 1, because in the Loki season 1 finale, He Who Remains said that he orchestrated everything leading up to where Loki and Sylvie met He Who Remains at the end of time in the Citadel. He made happen. So that's literally everything. He had it all written down. He showed it to them, from Loki and Sylvie falling in love with each other to them killing the fake timekeepers to arriving at the end of time, making the TVA a mess. That was all a part of his plan. And then at the end, when he was about to die, he told Sylvie, "See you soon." Now at the time, we thought he was referring to his variants, but what if he wasn't? What if this is indeed all a part of his plan and he is going to return? We talked about in a previous video how in the comics, Kang actually has the ability to transfer his consciousness into another variant before he dies. We believe that this could be what he is doing, or what he has already done. Before he died in the finale of season 1, when he was speaking to Loki and Sylvie, the timeline had already started to branch out, which means there began to be other variants of him in these other timelines. So when he died, right before, he could have transferred his consciousness. And this person, this variant, could be trying to return, and this could be who the insiders are referring to as He Who Returns. However, there's kind of a problem. The TVA might explode, but that's where we believe his good old buddy, Ouroboros, could come into play. We know that OB created the TVA handbook. We know that he was with He Who Remains since the very beginning. That's a very long time to know somebody. And you most likely wouldn't betray somebody that you created something so cosmically huge, the TVA, that literally controls the multiverse. OB created that with He Who Remains. And for eons, OB has been a part of it. So why would OB betray He Who Remains? I really don't think he would. And there is also a very particular scene in episode 4 that could be hinting at OB and Victor Timely / He Who Remains / Kang working together. When OB and Victor Timely are talking about integrating the device that Victor created into OB's device, he states that it would take a long time. And then Victor goes up to him and says, "If anyone can do it, it's you and me. And then they shake hands, but the camera makes sure to focus on the two of them shaking hands. I think this is foreshadowing. I think that they're trying to hint at the two of them working together. Now, it may not be this exact variant, Victor Timely working with OB, but I think they're hinting at a variant of Kang, of He Who Remains, and OB working together here with this scene. I think this scene right here is very intentional. So again, why would OB betray somebody that he created the TVA with? I don't think he would, and I think this is actually shown possibly in episode 4 because, like I mentioned, I think OB lied. In the season finale of episode 1, it's very clear that He Who Remains created the TVA, not Victor Timely. And in fact, He Who Remains confirms that he existed in the 31st century, not in the 19th century. He existed way in the future from where we are at now. That's why he had the technology to create everything and become Kang the Conqueror. Victor Timely did not have that technology, and in fact, Ouroboros even says that. When he meets Victor Timely and doesn't know he's Victor Timely right away, he says, "I learned everything I know from a 19th century inventor named Victor Timely." If he had the resources, he would have been bigger than Einstein. I think that this line is either 1, a lie by OB that is very intentional, or 2, a lie that he doesn't necessarily know that he is saying. Let me explain. Like I mentioned, we know that He Who Remains created the TVA, and we know that he was not a variant of Victor Timely. As he explained, he was Nathaniel Richards, which is Kang the Conqueror's original name. He existed in the 31st century, he built the TVA, and he won the multiversal war. This was also confirmed in episode 4. We saw the past of Ravonna Renslayer and He Who Remains, and we found out that she led his army in the multiversal war fight. So he had the TVA and everything set up before he actually won the war. But point being, this was Nathaniel Richards from the 31st century who created the TVA, not Victor Timely from the 1900s. So why is OB telling Victor that he learned everything from a 19th century scholar? Well, 1, he could simply be lying. It's clear that He Who Remains needs the TVA to not explode and the time loom to be fixed to be able to handle more timelines. So clearly he has a plan in place for that to happen, and it has to involve OB and possibly even Victor Timely as well, because we know that Victor adds his device that basically fixes the problem that OB had. This could be why He Who Remains told Miss Minutes and Ravonna Renslayer to give this variant of him that existed in the 1900s the TVA guidebook, so he could go on to create this one very specific invention that could complete OB's technology to fix the time loom. OB might know this because he could be in on He Who Remains' plan and could simply be going along with it, going along with whatever the plan is to try and get He Who Remains to return. If he's a part of the plan, this makes sense. It makes sense he would lie and essentially just do whatever. As long as that time loom gets fixed, it doesn't matter what he says. Or option 2 is that his memory was erased with everybody else's, and He Who Remains actually kind of put Victor Timely into his life as a part of He Who Remains' plan. Again, for whatever reason that we don't know yet, He Who Remains clearly needs the time loom to be able to handle more timelines. And the TVA can't explode, otherwise he can't go to a TVA. He built the TVA, he obviously doesn't want it to explode, plus he needs it to control everything. So He Who Remains could have simply planted Victor Timely into Ouroboros' life. What's interesting is we don't actually know how Victor Timely taught Ouroboros. Remember, the TVA was created in the 31st century at least, maybe even after that. So how did OB, somebody who was working with the TVA in the 31st century, get influenced by a 19th century inventor? Well, He Who Remains kind of putting that information inside of him after erasing his memory makes sense, because somebody from the future learning from somebody in the past about how to create something as complicated as the TVA, that doesn't make sense. Now, I've heard some people talk about Ouroboros and say that he could be a variant of He Who Remains himself, and while I do like this theory, I don't think it's true, because then they wouldn't need Victor Timely for his temporal aura. In theory, if OB is a variant of He Who Remains, then his temporal aura should work to get into the system of the TVA, but it doesn't. Then again, at the same time, he did not stick his head into the device that OB made, but again, this still could be kind of a trick by OB and He Who Remains. Now, of course, there is always the possibility that Victor Timely could be faking everything. And he really could just be He Who Remains pretending to be a variant, this Victor Timely fellow. And yes, he does die at the end of episode 4, but we know they're going to go back in time and keep trying until they fix it. We've also seen a scene in the promos where Loki is the one who walks out onto the bridge going towards the time loom just simply as he is, no suit on whatsoever. Now, he's a god, so perhaps he can survive that temporal energy. But in that scene, it doesn't look like Victor Timely is the one that goes out. So there is a scenario most likely where Victor Timely lives. So he might become He Who Remains, in which that scene where he is shaking hands with OB could be quite literal. Him and OB are indeed working together, and that could be a part of He Who Remains' plan before he died. He could have simply informed them, or told Miss Minutes to inform both of them. However, I think Victor Timely is gone, and I think He Who Remains was simply using him to give OB the technology that he needed to fix the time loom and save the TVA. And as Miss Minutes said before she got shut down, Victor Timely will never be him. But this is just our theory. Let us know what you think about this in the comments down below, and if you have a theory of your own, let us know. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to stay up to date on all the latest breakdowns. You can find us on Instagram and Twitter as well. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Woof woof.